Hello, this is Stebloxer502 once again, and today I'm going to be showing you guys a factory versus factory counter video here on what units from the Cloaky bot factory will kill units from the light vehicle factory the most effectively, or rather, the most effectively for the cost. So, the first unit that we have here is the Scorcher. So, the Scorcher has the weakness of it takes it a while for it to turn, as with any light vehicle. It's not the fastest of the light vehicles, it's the second fastest, or probably actually the third. The Crasher, it competes with the Crasher for speed, but, you know, obviously the Dart is going to be the fastest unit, but for all intents and purposes, it's going to be the fastest unit that you're going to be fighting on the ground. So, probably to take this unit out cost efficiently, you are going to want to use 2 or 3 glaives, because if you use something like a warrior, then first of all it can run away from the warrior. It's not going to take it out very effectively. If you simply want to defend against Scorchers, then the warrior would be a good choice. But a better choice would simply be a Lotus, because it costs a whole lot less, and it generally kills Scorchers. If the Scorcher gets right up on top of a Lotus, it will take it out. So you're gonna have to have just a little bit of support. So about 2 Lotuses will kill any Scorcher. So the Scorcher, it's really, at the current state of the game, in my opinion, almost the bread and butter of the ground combat in the light vehicle factory. So you have to be able to deal with these things effectively, and you have to prioritize them in battle for removal. If you don't, they will absolutely wreck your face. Okay. And obviously, like anything that is of this much importance, if he has a large group of them, you might even want to use a tick, and then again, just glaives. Now, as for the leveler, regardless of how tempting it seems to just swarm these things with glaives, don't do that. You're going to get a whole lot of them killed, and it's just not going to be cost efficient at all. So, what you're going to want to use against a leveler is a Rocco or Zeus. Zeus is very effective against the leveler. It'll kill it, it won't take hardly any damage, and there you go. Though just from the general counter system between the two units, obviously the Rocco is going to be the preferred choice here. Units that you definitely don't want to use against the leveler, like already I've stated, the glaive. The scythe, no, you don't want to use the scythe, because once you get off the first strike with the scythe, what's going to happen is it's just going to turn around and it's going to shoot it. And yeah, then you have a dead scythe. So, the warrior does okay against it. In fact, from what I recall, it usually actually wins the conflict. The Zeus, yeah, extremely effective. The hammer, avoid using hammers against them. Sharpshooter obviously works on just about anything. And as for the rest of the units, they don't fight on the ground. Oh, one exception, the tick. Ticks versus levelers. Well, okay, the leveler is not really that high value of a target. Yes, they can really dish out damage to wide groups of enemies, but considering how effective you can take them out with either the Rocco, the warrior, or the Zeus, I wouldn't use a tick on one of them, unless they're just about to wreck your entire economy, in which case, yeah, you will have to have a quick reaction there. Now, the Ravager. This thing, from what I can recall, has been toned down significantly. The accuracy on its gun, I believe, has been, reduced. And, it generally does less damage. They've done some kind of a buff to the Ravager that makes it not as effective anymore because I've tried using Ravager swarms recently and it just hasn't done anything. So, as for killing the Ravager, scythes work very well. If you don't micro them enough, then it might get a shot or two off on it, and thus actually you eventually wind up killing it. But scythes do work well. Glaives obviously work to perfection if you have about 5 or 6 of them. Roccos work okay. One Rocco is not going to cut it. You're going to need at least 3 or 4 to really do anything to a Ravager. Warriors, Ravager wins against a Warrior 1-on-1. 2 Warriors against a Ravager. The Warriors are still going to take quite a bit of punishment, but the Ravager is going to be destroyed. The Zeus, yes. The Zeus works well against the Ravager. Not too terribly well, considering the amount of health that it has. 1850 there. But it does work. So, units that work against the Ravager. Glaives in mass numbers. Roccos in mass numbers. Warriors in at least groups of 2, and Zeus's in preferably groups of 2. I think you could win with 1. And of course all the others, those are always up for grabs. Now, as for dealing with the Slasher, this is another very crucial unit from the Light Vehicle Factory. It's probably the most important unit here, except for the Dominatrix. This thing is a major pain in the butt. Sometimes I wish these things didn't exist. They can make matches quite unfair sometimes. But as for the Slasher, killing a Slasher, just one Slasher, obviously can be done with pretty much anything. Killing about 10 at once, as I've demonstrated in some of my previous videos, can be an extremely hard thing to deal with. From what I can tell, the best strategy you're going to be able to use on this is probably a Scythe or a Glaive Swarm. Scythe Swarm, well, considering these things only cost 140 metal apiece, I'd try to stay away from the Scythe Swarm, though obviously those have other uses, but you're putting in quite a bit of an investment there if you make a lot of scythes. So, probably just a Glaive Swarm would work very, very well against a Slasher spam. You're going to need about 1.5 Glaives, though, for every Slasher. So if he has 10 Slashers, you're going to need 15 Glaives. As for Warriors, no. Don't use Warriors against Slashers. That's a big no. Roccos, no. Don't use them. Zeus's, if you have enough of them, they can work because of the amount of health that they have. Though Zeus's and Glaives work well against the Slasher spam, if the only thing that you actually have to use are Cloaky units. Sharpshooter, way too much of an investment. He's going to locate it quickly and destroy it, because Slasher spams are really quite cheap. He'll locate and destroy it with other units. Ticks, don't try to use ticks. Ticks are not going to work well on these things at all, because that turret on it, obviously it shoots homing missiles, it'll set off the tick instantly, and yeah, you'll be hosed. Hammers, yeah, okay, it makes sense in theory. They have a longer range, but generally, no. Try to stick to Glaives and Zeus's. Okay, as for the 2 artillery units here, really anything works well in these, but the preferred unit is Glaives. Anti-aircraft, kill it with anything. Dart, kill it with Glaives or Warriors. Don't try to use Zeus's on a dart, Roccos on a dart. They're not going to hit it. Okay, and finally, for the trump card of the Light Vehicle Factory, the Dominatrix. Okay, this thing is a pain, but the best way you're going to be able to deal with this thing are units with the longest possible range, because you want to stay out of its range. Really, health is not going to be a limitation for this thing, considering if your opponent has like maybe like 6 or even 10 of these things. He's just going to capture whatever you throw at him, and once he captures the first unit, especially if it's an expensive one, the ratio and the tide of the battle changes like significantly. It's like capturing one Zeus versus killing one Zeus. It's a double effect there, and the more expensive the unit captured, again, the more devastating the effect. So you don't really want to get in the range of these things. If you look at them, it has a pretty massive range too. So, I mean, it makes it even harder to deal with. Now, luckily not many people spam these things in multiplayer, but if you do have to deal with them, Rocco's, I would say, work well, because if I can select the 2 here, select this one, and have all my Roccos come over here. No, you, stay put, stay put. Hey, you, over there. Okay, good job. Okay, now, Roccos and Dominatrix at the same time. If you look at this one, this Rocco right here, it has perimeter range, this is its range, and the Dominatrix, this is its range. So, theoretically here, they have basically the same range. If you actually compare the stats, 450 versus 455, technically the Rocco outranges the Dominatrix, but by 5 points. So, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try to use long-range units and expensive units. If you have to employ a sharpshooter to take these things out, that's not a problem, because they can be very, very devastating. And obviously, once you kill the thing, you regain all the units. So, killing a big mass of these things will almost... It's nearly a detriment to your opponent, because they're thinking, well, okay, he's not going to be able to kill these things, so I'm going to put a lot of my strategy and my focus on these things. And if you exploit that and actually do manage to kill them by some supernatural reason, then, yeah, he's going to be very ticked at you because he's going to lose promptly. So, that pretty much covers the Dominatrix. Another strategy you could probably use against this thing is something like a Stinger. Because the Stinger, you can see its range here, it does significantly outrange the Dominatrix. 620 versus the 450 over here. So, Stinger, good effective against the Dominatrix. Yeah, good effective counter against the Dominatrix. So, what you want to do is you want to take and try to lead the Dominatrix over here into your stack defenses. Using, and I mean, that brings me to something else here. Using only units in 0K is fine, and, you know, it's encouraged. But one problem I've found with that is that certain strategies, like this one, take for instance, exploit that to a pretty good level. Because if you just take something like a Stinger, it's actually going to be cost effective against it. Not that Roccos aren't, but you got to keep in mind, it can capture the Roccos. And something like Glaives, they're not even going to get close enough to do anything to it. Scythes, if you have enough of them, yeah, Scythes, they will work. But something like a Stinger, just static defense, is going to be your best bet here. And I see so many players that they just emphasize use units whenever possible, only use units, you know. It's like a crime if you don't, you know, if you're not like a unit specialist or whatnot, you know. And that's just, I mean, it's quite frankly ridiculous, because the rest of these units have, I mean, you know, by units I mean obviously the stack defenses here, they have great potential as well. And in the grand scheme of things, they're more cost efficient than any unit you're ever going to get. obviously they cannot move, so you have to be wary of how many you make. And also, if you're counting on them to defend an area and your opponent does happen to destroy them, then you're probably screwed. But you just have to treat them as units, but they're cheaper and more powerful. So don't use stacked defenses as like actual defenses per se. That sounds weird considering it's in their name, but don't use them as like defenses. Basically, you're counting on this thing to defend an area perfectly from attack. Don't use them like that, because your opponent will take that strategy, he'll very clearly see what you're trying to do, and he'll exploit it. You can create defenses against every single thing in the game, but we all know where that gets people. Yeah. Hashtag nuke. Yeah. And you're thinking, well, okay, what if I just made a protector? Yeah, that's not going to cut it either. He will find a way around your defenses. So, don't count on them as being like guards. Don't count on them as being like guards for areas. Some of them you can. Like guarding in specific things in specific locations, like a lotus around your factory to prevent scouts and raiders from, just doing unnecessary damage. That's good. That works as a good defensive tool. But other than that, you want to treat them more as stationary, more effective, more cost-efficient units. So that's all for now, guys, and I will see you in the next one.